Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kristen Dorr. I'm the Integro webinar moderator. If you're new to Integro or our webinar series, hello, welcome. We're happy to have you. For those that come here every month, hello as well. We're happy to have you guys too. Integro does monthly webinars. We always keep it to 30 minutes so that they're a valuable use of your time. On the phone with me today, I have Jeff Dunning. He is the VP of Strategic Initiatives here at Integro, and he's going to be chatting with you guys about raw valuation. So before I let Jeff take it away, I do have a few quick notes for you guys, as per usual. First, we have a polling question today. So Jeff is going to be asking you guys a polling question at the very start of the presentation. It's just a couple slides in, so pay attention to that. And second, if you have any questions at any time, you can ask those in the control panel, and Jeff will answer all of them at the end of his presentation. So Jeff, take it away.
Great, thanks, Kristen. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy day. I know everybody's got a lot going on, but I appreciate you spending 30 minutes with us today. Those of you who've been here in the past, you know a little bit about Integro, but real quick, we work with companies and we help them deal with complex data problems. Around identification, cleanup, modernization, enrichment, and automation. And we like to share things in our webinars about how we've helped our clients be successful. Especially, this one in particular is around identification and some of the things we've done to actually move things forward. We've done a lot of work here, and we feel like this ROT valuation is an area that we've seen lots of progress on, and our customers have been able to kind of move forward in the process. So let's just jump in here. So everyone wants to clean up their content. We want to clean up our ROT, our redundant, obsolete, trivial type of content, right? We want to remove it and get it out of there. And as you can see, in our experience and analytics we've done over time, ROT's a large portion of that content that you have out there in your unstructured data sources, right? So if we can clean up our ROT, we can, gain control of storage cost and apply governance to the stuff that actually has value and not waste a lot of analytics or analysis time on the ROT. The problem has been, it's a lot. The ROT has always been a large volume of that content. And what happens is organizations get stuck because they're trying to make decisions on ROT across the board. So they're trying to make decisions around what should my actions be for all of my ROT. And quite honestly, all ROT is not the same. As we go through here, we'll talk a little bit about that. But there's files that are temporary Word files, a 0-byte file. That's ROT that we know very simply make a decision and go. Where there's other stuff that we might need some people to get involved. And when we put it all in one bucket and we try to get that oversight, it just becomes a daunting task. And we find a lot of our organizations, the clients we work with, are getting stuck there. And this is the part where things kind of really slow down and it makes the effort a lot harder. So we came back and took some time and said, how do we make that a little bit simpler? And that's what this little short webinar today is all about. It's how do we simplify the process, give organizations the courage to start making decisions and action their ROT. That action could be delete or quarantine and some of the stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about all that stuff. But making the bucket smaller and the content we have to action against a little bit smaller makes our life a little bit easier. So before we get started here into the meat of things, let's just ask the real first question is, how do you deal with your ROT? How does your organization deal with the ROT? So we have a little poll question open. And everybody's...
So the poll is out, guys. Thank you to everyone who voted.
Back.
Yeah. All right. We almost have everyone. I'll leave it open for a few more seconds, Jeff, and then I'll close it out.
Okay. And then I'm going to see if I can see the results here after you close it out. But I'm sure, everybody's kind of dealing with stuff a little bit differently. Let's see, like, where most people are and be a good barometer for who's on the call today. So let me know when you're going to close that there, Kristen.
Yep, I'm sharing the results now. Would you like me to read them?
Yeah, please, because for some reason I'm not seeing them. I don't know why.
No worries.
Oh, here we go.
So we have two responses mainly. The first one, we keep everything first in, still here, 38%. And then the second response is we depend on our users to clean up, 63%.
Super typical. Yeah, super typical. I see them now. And, you know, the first one is really, I'm surprised it's not a little bit bigger, but a lot of organizations, clients we're dealing with, that's where everybody's at. First in, still here. The whole fish method, right? Things are just still here. Letting the users clean up is good. They know the most about the content. But what we'll see here is when we get into the confidence levels, there's a lot we can do from an organization level. We need the users, but let's put a little bit less onus on them and put more onus on the business and some tools that we might be able to use to get that done. So as we mentioned, not all ROT is the same. So what we want to try to do is a couple key points that we want to do to get this done. We want to apply some confidence level to ROT criteria. So ROT criteria means what are we using to identify the ROT? We'll see that. And then based on that criteria of identification, what's our confidence that this is actually ROT? Then vary our actions depending on the confidence. So the more we're confident, the higher confidence level, we can do more with it. We can delete it. We're comfortable going to a full delete mode, right? Why should we not treat it all the same, right? Why are we looking at putting it in buckets? Is so that we can act upon it. So we can ask the users to do a little less work against content. Let's not ask them to review stuff of very minimal or little value that we're confident is ROT, and let's have them spend some time evaluating the lower confidence stuff, the stuff that we're not 100% sure on, the stuff that while it looks like it may not have business value, maybe it does to that end user, right? So let's give them a little less work to do in this analysis part of it, all right? So what is ROT analysis or ROT identification? Right, we're trying to categorize content that is of potentially no business value. This is first pass type of what I call identification and not really analysis. We're gonna identify information about the file, not about the content within the file. So we're not looking into content, we're looking at metadata more, right? We're gonna categorize that content into these confidence levels, and then we're gonna apply actions based on those confidence levels. So now we're gonna actually get the courage to say we're gonna do something with that content. That's the big step in a content analysis or content cleanup process, is taking that big step of actually actioning our content. And then we could use access and modified dates. So a lot of time information about the file is useful, but we need to know how old it is as well. So heck, if it's really old, it's this type of content, it makes our life a little bit easier. So use those dates to help apply that confidence. So let's get into those levels. So what have we done? So we've done some work around with the clients we're doing, and we've applied it different ways, and we've been tweaking it ever since. And I think we'll be tweaking it forever, adding and deleting stuff that falls into these things. But basically, we've come up with 3 areas of ROT, analysis of ROT. One is high confidence. And the goal there is typically an action, delete it with no business review. So don't go back to the business. We'll get some compliance reviews. So we'll get someone to review and still sign off, but we're not going back to the business. These things are like temporary files, 0-byte files, log files that are greater than a certain age. And we'll kind of see how we come up with all that criteria. But stuff that we have confidence, high confidence in. And then we go to medium confidence. Right, medium confidence, files where we start looking at content names and folders and stuff that we believe is ROT. Typically, there's stuff at it that's saying to us, it's not being used, it's not being accessed based on some information we have. We truly believe there's no business value. We think it's ROT, but we're not 100% sure. So in this case, let's change our action, go to a quarantine, keep it around for some period of time, 3 months, 6 months. Maybe the business gets to review some of that stuff, and you have an exception process. Say we move something to quarantine and it's not right. The business has the ability to request that back. And we have a process to go through to get approval to get that back. So that would be medium confidence. And then low confidence is really about, it's been identified as ROT, but we're not 100% sure. Maybe there's not a lot of it. Maybe these are one-off files. Maybe there's some reasons why we have a concern there. And now we're going to ask the business to get involved. So the business is now going to be involved in reviewing just a sliver of what we identified as right. We're not asking them to do a lot. We're asking them to get involved in stuff that we, quite honestly, we're not super comfortable deleting or quarantining that content. We've identified it based on our criterias, but we want a little bit more review of it. So that's kind of where we're at with our 3 buckets and being able to assign criteria to those 3 buckets and then actions to those 3 buckets and how much the business has to get involved. And the important part is here, when we're doing cleanup, the less we're going back to the business and interrupting their day and asking them to do this stuff, the more buy-in that we're getting. So we're getting acceptance. We're getting people that want to help and go through this process, because we're not giving them 100,000 files in a spreadsheet and say, hey, look at these and tell me if you need them or not. That's just not going to work. It's just not, it's not doable. So let's dive in a little bit more to high confidence. We'll dive into a little, what each one of these areas here and talk about them. Again, this is stuff we're going to delete. Our confidence is high that this is right. The risk is low that it has business value, right? After governance team review, compliance review, whomever we're asking to do a little bit of that review, we're just going to delete it. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to start chopping it down. If we remember back to our opening slide, we're finding high confidence ROT is a good amount of data that we're just taking a sliver out and we're kind of getting rid of, right? We're going to do the governance team review to see if there's anomalies. Of course, working through the data, you always want to kind of review and say, hey, there's a lot of files here, it hit this particular bucket. Let's just take one, couple minutes out of our time and take a look at it a little bit deeper. Make sure we're identifying it truly is what it is, right? So you do want to have a set of eyeballs. You do want to go through it, but it's the compliance team. It's the team whose project this is, who's running the cleanup, right? We're not going back to the business. We can typically handle this stuff. And what falls in that category? So we've come up with, some really deep rules or criteria around it. We've left a lot of the wording out. It would make these slides crazy busy, but we build these rules or criteria for what content falls in that bucket so that we can, in the background, use, depending on what the tool is that we use to go after this content, what file analysis tool we're going to use, we can build these rules based on these contents that we laid out. And all of them have a description, and then all of them behind it have really an in-depth type of query, basically, of how we go to find them. So in this one, we kind of left the named backup, and here we're using a date associated with this, and we're using a file or folder that has names like backup or archive and stuff like that. But if it also contains one term from a word like procedure or process or routine or tool, then we're not going to go after it. So there's a lot of inclusive, exclusive type terms that make up our criteria that we found have been super successful, that we find that we are hitting what we want to hit and we're not capturing the stuff that we really don't want it to be part of this, right? So there's the rule has a name, the rule has a description. In this case, we're using some dates associated with it, right? And then you have things like 0-byte files and temp and backup, and we all know how we save all those Office files with the tilde in the front of it that causes, just this buildup. All that stuff kind of falls in this category. And with most of the tools we use on the marketplace, we're able to build these rules and present this data in those subsets. And we'll talk a little bit about the processes down towards the end of this. But that's kind of the high confidence, right? And like I said, there's a lot of details that we're not seeing on how we actually get to the files, but there's always good descriptive stuff. And we work with our clients through this, say, okay, here's where we start with high confidence. Let's go through it, make sure you understand it, and we could tweak it however we need to tweak it for your particular business. There may be certain content that you have to go out. I always use the case of, we all want to say that there shouldn't be, music files on our networks, but if you go to retail, there's a lot of music in some places because they pipe music into all their stores and they bought it and they licensed it. We really don't want to get used to it. So there's an example of how we have to make sure we have exceptions. Here's our medium confidence ROT. Medium confidence ROT is probably our biggest area where we see stuff fall. So again, we have pretty solid confidence that this is rot, right? We feel pretty good about it. However, on the flip side of it, there's a chance that some of this stuff may have business value. This is where a lot of exceptions come in. So there's some concern that we have business value here, and we don't want to be overly aggressive at deleting stuff that may have business value. The quarantine works really nice here, right? So move stuff to quarantine. We have it for a little time. Let the business operate and see if things bubble to the top and say, oh my gosh, I needed this. How do I go about getting it back? Because we still have it. If you're 3 months down the road and nobody's balked and nobody's identified anything, that just builds our confidence, right? It builds our confidence and our courage to actually go and hit the delete button. So really, it's the concern of possibly having business value that makes it medium confidence more than it is our confidence about whether or not it's rot. That's kind of what medium is, and it's typically is the biggest bucket in the process. And what we do there is the governance team again reviews, and the governance team typically has some questions for the business here. And this is where it's really nice having a subject matter expert, an SME that knows the data around a particular business unit that you can bounce questions off of to. Typically, it's not a lot of content they're looking at, but you're asking questions. Hey, we found this stuff. It's in this folder. You help us understand what it is, right? So the governance or compliance team is typically going back with some small questions to the business. Again, very similar type of, same setup here, and we go after stuff that's, we use dates a lot more here around copies of file and old, when we find terms like old and copy and draft and those kind of things. Programming files also falls in here. But you can see where there'd be a little bit of a concern to say, hey, I know it's programming stuff, but maybe the business is using this or needs it, or heck, maybe it's the only copy of this, and do we really want to get rid of it, right? You can see where a question might pose itself, right? So here's the stuff here. Again, we start using a little bit more dates when we go to this stuff, and these are just kind of sample criteria that we use. You'll see here, again, tweak as we work with clients, right? And again, the median confidence one is a little bit bigger, so we're looking at some of this other stuff as well. And you can see where we start to get into some terms and find things on how files are named, some words that shouldn't be out there, some folder names we shouldn't be using, some things that kind of bubble up for us that are easy decisions in the base. So we get a lot of easy confidence type stuff in this mix here, but it's not always the case. So in some organizations, stuff boils to the top. We say, wow, this really should be deleted here. And other organizations say, I think we need to ask the question. And that's kind of what we're doing. But again, we're doing this on smaller slices of data. I remember those charts earlier and said, here's all the rot, which is, 40-somewhat% of all your unstructured content. But we're not looking at 40% in one click. We're looking at maybe, 20%, 18%, stuff like that, which makes it a whole lot easier for us to get through. Then our low confidence rot. So this is really a lot of what we see falling in here is stuff that are more coming out of user shared drives. So think of most organizations have departmental shares, right? This is my, shared drive, and I put content in it. My entire business unit or department or these 10 people can see that content. Typically, most of the rot in those areas is higher medium. There's a lot of it, similar nature and that type of stuff. When you get to user shares, we all know this, right? We're creating so much one-off type content. It's the one-off type content that really gives us the bigger fits. It matches certain rules about certain kind of content, but at the same time, there's some concerns about business value, and quite honestly, there's a little bit of user value that we're concerned with as well. If I'm doing a rot analysis, I'm finding these photos, which we know is rot. They're camera photos identified as coming from a camera, and it's somebody's vacation photos. I really want to get to that someone and let them know that this is inappropriate, but before I get rid of it, I'd like you to make a copy for yourself, right? We don't want to just go out and do that. So we want to have a little bit of process there about how we can help our users as well. So the low confidence, again, comes in there's questions about ROT or not, absolutely in this thing, but there's also the end user. A lot of the end user content falls into this lower confidence stuff where we have to go back to the business. And it might be just going back to the business more on the personal side than always on the business side. But the business doesn't want to just, heck, we've been allowing it forever. Most organizations have not had rules. There's probably some policy that says, hey, don't put your personal data on my shared drive, but we've been allowing it forever. We don't want to just put a stake in the ground and chop it. We want to, we want to do the right thing by our employees. If we're going to ask them to help us back, let's make sure we're doing the right thing there. And that's where the low confidence comes in and allows us to kind of get them involved and say, hey, why don't you take care of this before the next process is going to take care of it for you, those kind of things. So that's kind of where low confidence ROT is. And you'll see the same thing, right? Again, we're using, as we go through a lot of this stuff, we're using the metadata. Probably should have talked about this a little earlier. We're using the metadata associated to the files. File extensions, dates, content types, file names, folder names, size of files, and we're using that stuff to fill our criteria up, right? So we're getting, you're finding super large files. We want to try to understand why we have these super large files. It's probably ROT, but maybe there's value there. Let's make sure we don't just do the wrong thing. And then typically with the low confidence stuff, we didn't really talk about the action on the prior slide. The actions are going to vary, but we're typically doing some kind of cleanup across the board. Some of it might just be going over to quarantine, but we're asking the end users to help. Sometimes they'll just say, hey, you can delete that, I need this, and you kind of go through it and your actions are happening. So we use more of a markup method with our low confidence ROT, in that we provide the ability to mark up either at the folder level or at the file level on a decision. Delete this, quarantine this, exception, I need this type of markup stuff. And then we give little pieces of that out or use it in the tool, depending on the tool you're using, where you can do those markups to content. So the low confidence stuff doesn't typically have one big action. It uses markups to actually define what those actions are. Those three things, what we just talked about has been a huge transformation for us as going out and helping organizations with these problems. We've gotten the traction that we've never had before. We're moving these projects down the stream now, and we're getting stuff done. We've seen the pauses and how long it's taken sometimes to decide on actions and to analyze the ROT we found. And by making these groups smaller, understanding what's in each bucket a little bit more detailed with these descriptions and stuff, so the client knows what we're talking about when we talk about these things, it's transformed our ability to really push these projects forward. So that's been really important for Integro and our clients. This is what has made us successful. On the reporting side, just a couple little things to kind of take a thing. We want, graphical representation of results and visualization of the risk at scale is always important to get people engaged. This is the engage part. How do I engage the business owners, management, graphical representation of these results, seeing how big the problems are, right? The ability to review the ROTs by confidence is a must, I believe, at this point. All the ROT can't be grouped together. And then we have to be able to give those results back out to business unit, departmental groups. And if it's off your user share, we need you to be able to see that very small subset of the content that's related to you, right? Don't give it to the manager and say, here's your 10 users and here's all their content. It becomes overwhelming for one person to see all that, breaking it down in pieces. So reporting has to be able to do those things. Graphically present your results, be able to present them by confidence levels, not just here's all your ROT, and then be able to really give the results down to business unit, even end user level of stuff. So be able to use parameters like user share name to be able to produce some results. Important to get the ball rolling down the field, right? And then the findings review. So structured review by confidence level. Only include the business when the confidence dictates the business get involved. The more we include the business, the slower the process is going to go. That's just the way it works. The business believes today that they need everything that they've ever created. First in, still here is what they believe. And we have to change that a little bit. So the stuff that they really don't need to be caring about, let's not include them in that process. The stuff they need, that we need them to help, we'll include them. Smaller batches, easier review. It's simple. Anything you do, the smaller you're trying to work with, the easier it is to kind of work with that. And all this stuff does one important thing that moves these projects forward, and it provides the business with the courage to action content, whether it's delete, quarantine, whatever your action is. By doing this, providing all this level of detail and putting in the smaller batches and stuff, businesses now have the courage or the ability to move forward with their actions. So that's the end of my slides. I want to open it for a couple questions here. We got a couple minutes left. Kristen, I'm not sure if there's any questions there, and then I have one last next step slide we'll do at the very end here.
Okay, perfect. So we do have a couple questions, Jeff. Thank you, everyone who's asking questions. Appreciate it. First question for you, Jeff. Do you have a sample of a memo that announces the ROT process to executive management? So Integro has a really nice set of communications. We talked about this ROT review here. The communication piece is by far probably the most critical in the whole entire process. We have a really nice structured package of communications from, initial announcement to companies, or why, even documents of why it's important, all the way down to here's what's coming, here's expectations, all these types of things. So yeah, we have a lot of great communications from hard copy documents into videos and stuff. So if you reach back out to Integro, we might, we could probably share some of the stuff we're doing in that realm. Awesome. Next question. Seems someone would like a little bit more clarification. Where did you say the high and medium confidence ROT would be found?
So these are actions we're doing against unstructured content. So think of file shares. A lot of this applies to SharePoint content. It could be done in the cloud against OneDrive data. So it's all being applied against your unstructured content. A lot of these rules don't typically apply to email. Email, you take a different approach, in our opinion, right? You do more of an inclusive approach. With email, I prefer to go and find my content of value and say if it's not valuable, then I'm just going to get rid of it versus trying to find my ROT. So we tackle email differently, but most of this is against your unstructured content. So think file shares, think SharePoint, OneDrive in the cloud, Box, those types of content sources.
Awesome. Scott, I understand you wanted to take this last question. We have one more question, and I'll be brief here. So someone also asked us if we will be at the MER conference in Chicago in May.
Hi, Kristen. Jeff, good job there. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And yeah, we are sponsoring the MER conference again this year. And we also have two different speaking engagements. I'll be speaking on machine learning and artificial intelligence and beyond the hype for InfoGov. And then we're also doing a presentation on the complete life cycle of governance with our partners, Preservica and Active Navigation. So we'll be there. We're also on the road quite a bit. I'll be in New York this week. I see some folks on the call here from New York, and I might have time for meetings in New York as well if you're available.
So Jeff, we do have one more question if you'd like to take it. Everyone
Sure.
on the call, I know we're at 30 minutes. Awesome. So the last question I'll give you is, what products are you using to identify your ROT?
Oh, so we have a couple tools in our toolbox. So IBM Stored IQ, we're doing some work with Active Nav. We've done some work with some homegrown solutions where we've done some used PowerShell and Windows capabilities to go get the metadata off the files and put that in a database and use just some queries to go after it. So we find that all the tools kind of support the structure that we've done. Everything we've worked with to date. Our two big products there, we're doing a lot with Stored IQ, a lot with Active Navigation today. but we've worked with others. The process seems to fit all the different tools that we've been working with over time.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Everyone on the call, I know Jeff has a couple more finishing words for you guys. I'll just quickly note that there is a survey that will pop up when you end the webinar. If you could give us your feedback, that would be really great. And Jeff, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, so just real quick, first of all, thanks. Thanks for spending 30 minutes with us today. Again, I know everybody's busy, but hopefully the content we share is valuable and is helpful in some of the things that you're working on. One of the things we'd just like to talk about is, we've done a lot of webinars around our content journey and where we think organizations need to go and stuff. And we have an offering for a free VIP workshop. It's a 2-day type of thing. It's about 2.5 hours each day. We'll come on site. We'll speak to your organization, your leadership, and representatives from different areas about the content journey. We'll cover things like cloud content services and all the privacy that's going on right now, governance of content, machine learning and AI type of things. It's a non-product, non-sales type of workshop. It's more about education and where we're seeing the marketplace going, as well as the things that we're doing with our clients, and we're seeing success. So it's more of education than it is sales or product specific. We don't get into like products. We really talk about topics. Interactive. It's more of sitting around the table and talking. Less about me getting up in the front of the room or Scott getting up in the front of the room presenting, right? So it's more of that and kind of leads you through. So we have that offer for our webinar attendees. So reach out to Integro, your account exec, and see if we can help you out there in that area. If you're interested, they'll have more details. So again, thanks so much for your time. I know we went a couple minutes over. Hope the content is valuable, and we'll chat next month.